another awesome episode of Emerging Civil War in Conversation Live. I'm Madeline Feierstein. I'm here with Melissa Winn of the National Museum of Civil War Medicine. Before we begin our talk tonight, we have a QR code in the corner of our screen which directs us to the Emerging Civil War website. We will be having a Q&A session at the end of the talk. Please put any questions you have for Melissa in the chat. Daz, who's our social media manager, is behind the scenes and can help direct those questions to us, but please use the chat feature for any comments or questions you may have. So Melissa, thanks so much for joining us. Do you want to give a little background and your experience for our viewers tonight?
Sure. Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to come on and talk a little bit about myself and what we're doing at the museum, of course. As a little bit of background, I can say that I am currently the Director of Marketing and Communications at the National Museum of Civil War Medicine. We are located in Frederick, Maryland. We're open every day of the week. But previous to working at the museum, I worked for a while for the American Battlefield Trust. And then before that, at HistoryNet as the director of photography for the entire magazine group, which encompassed 9 magazines. And a lot of people probably in the audience remember me from some of that stuff as well, because I worked on Civil War Times magazine. And my editor, the editor and I, Dana Schoaf, we used to go out on the battlefield a lot on videos, and that was a lot of fun. So people might remember some of that work as well. And that was kind of my first introduction into this Civil War world. So
yeah. And it seems like with a lot of the work you do, I mean, it's a lot of it with writing and with production and marketing, but you still get to go on the battlefield. You still get to go on site. And I want to move into your top 5 of the Civil War. We do this with every guest here. Now you can start with your favorite battlefield if you want, but you're welcome to go to favorite person, favorite event. Oh yeah, but let's hear about your personal top 5 favorites.
Sure. So my favorite battlefield, actually I wrote about this for Emerging Civil War, is Manassas Battlefield. I live in Centerville, Virginia, and I have for 20 some years at this point. So it's close to me. I'm very fortunate to live so close to a battlefield, I find. I'm originally from Wisconsin, so we didn't have any battlefields there. And I didn't realize how cool they were until we moved to Virginia. My husband's from Fredericksburg, Virginia. So that was my first sort of introduction. I remember driving through one of the areas of the battlefield down there in between his parents' house and him kind of showing me some of the earthworks. And I'm like, wait, those are real?
Right.
So that was pretty neat to see. So I feel so fortunate that I live in this area where there's so much history and that I'm very close to Manassas. I like the story of Manassas very much, the beginning of the war, the sort of, the idea that when first Manassas happens, there's still this idea that it's going to be a 3-month war. It's going to be over, by Christmas, and, it's not going to be over soon. And it sort of really lets people know this is a war and it's going to be a while here. So I like the story of, the battles, but I love the battlefield. It's, to me, very personal in many different ways. Pretty much my whole adult life is wrapped up in much of the battlefield because I've taken my children sledding there on Buck Hill. There's sledding.
Nice.
So whenever it snows, we've gone there to go sledding. I've taken photographs of, I did some freelance photography. I still do on the side with family photographs. And so I take some families there for that. And so and then I go running there all the time. I love the trails. I trained for the Marine Corps Marathon on the battlefield. And I just absolutely love to be there and see the transformation of some of it too. They just put up the blacksmith shop that they're interpreting the African-American blacksmith who lived there across from the Dogan House. So it's just seeing some of that. When they found the surgeon's pit there, it was kind of a local story for me as
Yeah.
well as a national story. So there's so many reasons why I love that
Mhm.
battlefield and have a real personal connection to it as well.
Mhm.
So,
It seems
so
like
that would be my
a
favorite.
I know it's a weird way to say it, but almost like a community battlefield because there are so
Yeah,
many local events and personal connections, like you said, and it feels very and another odd way to describe a battlefield, but very welcoming because
yeah,
immediately when you arrive to the visitor center, you're just introduced to it. Some battlefields you have to trek to, or the visitor center is not quite near the start of trails.
yeah,
But I really just like how even though it's pretty sprawling, that it's very clearly marked, and it makes it even though it's cut by a major road,
yeah.
that I
It's
it
cut by a
seems very
lot.
right. It is, yeah,
It has a very neat preservation story too. That's
yeah,
one of the the other
absolutely.
pieces of the story. It's
Hmm.
one of the first battlefield monuments is there, and some of the earliest preservation efforts. But of course, you can see many of them. There's a lot of development. It's
Yep.
one of the battlefields that really has to deal with a ton of development issues, being right here in the heart of Northern Virginia, near
Hmm.
DC, and so yeah. But I agree. I think it's in terms of battlefields, it's in such a urban area really
Yes.
that it does offer itself up in many different uses to a larger population than just people who are there to see the battlefield. So it's a green space, it's a community space for a lot of
Hmm.
people too.
Yes, and it's really interesting too how your what we call here emerging Civil War, your Civil War origin story, is also tied up with the battlefield, and you still engage with it. You haven't moved away from it. You're still involved in the Manassas battlefield story, and so a lot of people who we talk to, maybe they visited Gettysburg as a child, but now they live really far away from it. But it's nice that you can continue that connection
Yeah,
through where you live. And I, as you know, also live near it, and I'm very grateful to be able to live in
yeah,
this area in general.
yep.
Uh, Excellent. So your next top five, please.
Okay, so obviously, if anybody who has encountered me knows that my favorite personality
Mhm.
from the
There you
Civil
go.
War would be
Yeah.
John Rollins.
Yep.
I've also done some work. Again, I did a podcast recently with Chris Makowski and Kurt
Mhm.
Fields, who
Yeah.
living historian who portrays Grant, talking about John Rollins, who, again, for people who haven't seen any of that, was the chief of staff, so to say, for Grant for much of the war, pretty much the whole war, and then again follows him after the war into DC while he's working in DC, and then also into his administration as the president of the United States. He becomes Grant's Secretary of War. So
Yes.
he's my favorite personality. It
Mhm.
is really because I really like Grant.
Yeah.
That's sort of how I stumbled upon Rollins' story, of course, and
Mhm.
I just really like the story of their friendship. Which
Mhm.
again, I won't go into all of it because I could talk about Rollins forever. But it's a
Yeah.
lifetime friendship for both of them
Mhm.
that predates the war and goes well past it. Of course, Rollins dies very young and not too
Mhm.
long after the war, 1869. So
Right.
he doesn't live long, but they have a long friendship, and their lives are intertwined literally until Grant dies, because
Yeah.
Grant looks after Rollins' children for him and
Mhm.
erects a monument to him in DC. So they have
Yeah.
a very neat friendship.
How long have you been researching John Rollins?
I started getting interested in Rollins. I would say I first was reading some articles about Grant,
Mhm.
probably about 8 years ago. We were
Okay.
working on some
Yeah.
stories about him for the magazine,
Mhm.
Civil War Times. We did a cover story about how he wasn't the butcher anymore.
Uh-huh.
And so I really started to appreciate this sort of revival of Grant's reputation
Uh-huh.
and looking into it a little bit more. So I started reading some more about him, and I really was in Chernow's book about Grant, who
Mhm.
he really does a good job of um, sort of describe. He spends a lot of time on John Rollins.
Right.
Chernow does in his
Mhm.
biography of Grant, and that was really how I started to get interested in his role with Grant. And then, like a lot of people in the Civil War community, I can be a little obsessive.
Oh, that's
So,
a requirement here.
yeah, I think it is kind of a requirement. So I just started researching him more. I started actually talking to, I went to a conference and started talking to John Marszalek, who at the time was at the Grant Library, and he informed me that there was a man writing a biography about John Rawlins, who I immediately got in touch with. His name is Al Ottens, and he wrote No Ordinary Man, a book about the biography of John Rawlins, and it's fantastic. And we started conversing, and it's just gone on from there. So
let me ask you: is there a possible next John Rawlins work in the works with you? Possibly?
I don't know. He did a very good job of really covering it. So I think it would be neat to, and this is possibly something I would be interested in working on someday. There are lots of letters from John Rawlins that still exist in multiple different historical societies. The Chicago Historical Society has a lot of letters from him to his second wife, Emma, who he met actually in Vicksburg when they were occupying the city there. And so that would be something I think would be fun. But Al Ottens did a fantastic job of researching and encompassing John Rawlins and his personality and his role with Grant and his entire life. So
awesome. How about your third top 5?
Okay, so what are all of the top 5?
Oh, you can do a
top 5
person, battlefield, maybe a battle or an event. It could also be just a material culture or a book you like. It's a free for all with that. Yeah.
Oh, let's see. So I would say I was thinking, well, I've listened to a couple of the other ones here, and somebody was talking a little bit about one of their top 5 stories of the Civil War. And of course, I would say for me, and I think other people have seen me talk about this too, is the story of the dead letter office images, which is just a fascinating topic. I'm, of course, very interested in Civil War photography as well, being that I did so much research about photography and the Civil War photos at Civil War times. So I find all of the stories of Civil War photography fascinating, and the details. But the dead letter office images is one of my favorite topics, and I'll just briefly try to tell it because
for viewers here,
I could talk an hour about it, but I won't. But it is just, there's a post office during it predates the Civil War as well, but where letters end up that are that can't be delivered, and they end up at this office of the post office called the dead letter office. So it is within the purview of the clerks at the dead letter office to open up the mail and try to figure out, kind of sleuth out where these letters are supposed to go. And just during the Civil War, they just are inundated with thousands and thousands of letters that are getting lost. They either don't have the correct postage or they don't have the correct address. A lot of these guys who go off to the war, they've never written a letter before. They've never been away from home before. So lots of their mail is ending up at the dead letter office, and the dead letter office decides to start taking some of so many of them contain photographs of the men. That was one of the things that men did. They would send their photographs home through the war, and they would send them home to people, relatives. And near the end of the war, there's about estimates of about 5,000 of these photographs at the dead letter office. And a lot of times the stuff that would come in the mail, if they couldn't deliver the mail, they would just burn it. A lot of the stuff would just get destroyed because they couldn't deliver the mail. They couldn't deliver the objects with it. But they didn't want to do that with these photographs. These are the photographs of the men who are fighting in the army. They're fighting for a cause. So the postmaster at the time, the third assistant postmaster at the time, his name is Alexander Zevely, kind of comes up with the cool idea to crowdsource really
Uh-huh.
the identification of some of these men. So he takes all of the 5,000s of, about 5 or 6,000 photographs, attaches them to boards, numbers them all when the numbers correspond with the letters, and then he hangs them up in what is a museum of the dead letter office and attaches, them to the walls. So if you would come into the dead letter office museum, and this is what I think is so powerful about it, these 5,000 men on the
Yeah.
wall, the photographs of these men, and these are Union men. So, but this is the Union front line,
Yeah.
just staring at you. And
Yep.
these images are trying to get home, but they haven't gotten home. So I call them interrupted sentiments. They're kind of paused at they haven't gotten where they're supposed to go. So the story of them is just fascinating. It goes on much well past the war. And just the idea of trying to get these images home to me is so patriotic. And it really shows you how impacted the civilians of the war, civilians were by the war at that time as well. So that's one of my favorite stories from the Civil War.
Right. And just like Chris from Frogging Through History just said, this is not talked about enough. I remember a couple of years ago, I attended a conference at in the McCormick Institute where you had given a talk about the dead letter place, and it was the first time I met you, and I remember being so enthralled by that topic because I had never heard of it before, and it's kind of like in the periphery of Civil War conversation.
Yep.
And so I'm really glad we got to mention that tonight. So let's do one more, just top 5 or like top topic, and then we'll move into talking about the actual Civil War Medicine Museum. So,
okay, sure.
Anything else you're interested in, like favorite book, or if you have favorite movie, that also counts.
Ooh, well, I would definitely say that my favorite movie is Glory, Civil War related, and I actually just saw the movie. They just for Black History Month were showing it at the Alamo. So I actually got to see it on the big screen, which was really neat. I got to take my son to see it as well. He's 19. So it was really neat to see that he was really engaged in it. I saw the movie on this, they re-released it. I'm going to say it was 2019 it must have been some anniversary of the movie's release or something. And so they re-released it in the theaters. And I remember our whole staff at Civil War Times went to go see it. So it was really neat to see it on the big screen too, because when it originally came out, I did not see it in the theaters. So that was really neat. But this time I really was drawn into how beautiful it can be. Like the fighting at Fort Wagner is just it's beautiful with the music in the background and just the dramatic flashing lights and the explosions. And so it's just such a interesting story. It's so well done. It's a much more accurate film.
And we can respect that. Absolutely.
So I know there's, some stuff that's stretched and inaccurate, but also side note, one of the characters is Morgan Freeman's character's name is actually John Rollins.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Great connection. Awesome. Great. That's a great movie.
Rich was saying it was 2019 that it was the 30th anniversary. Yeah, it is incredible to see it on the big screen.
Yeah, I'll have to make sure I do that sometime.
Yeah,
on my bucket list now.
Yeah, absolutely. I was so glad that that I knew about being able to go see the movie this time. It was a very small release, just for Black History Month. So
yeah. So before we get talking about the National Museum of Civil War Medicine, I want to remind anyone watching, if you have a question for Melissa, to please put it in the chat. We will be doing a Q&A session towards the end of our hour together. And the QR code in the corner is to visit the Emerging Civil War website. So, Melissa, would you like to give our viewers kind of just a high-level summary here of the mission of the National Museum of Civil War Medicine, a little bit of its origin story, if you can?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So, the National Museum of Civil War Medicine, Rich says he turned 30. Yeah. Okay, now I feel old. But um, nuts. That's awesome. But I was just talking to Rich about that movie too, so
Yeah.
it's cool. Um, but the museum, back to the museum, it's in Frederick, Maryland. So we're very fortunate to be in Frederick, Maryland, which is a very thriving little
Yeah.
community as well, too.
Mhm.
It began in 1996. Actually, was our founders, Gordon Dahlman and his wife Karen Dahlman. Gordon Dahlman was a dentist
Oh,
actually, and he was just really interested in collecting Civil War medicine artifacts, dentistry artifacts, which there aren't too many of, but related to the Civil War. So he's really interested in those items. And again, sort of a prerequisite of being in the Civil War field, you have to be sort of obsessive. So he
yeah.
gathered a pretty large collection of Civil War medical artifacts, and he and Karen decided to make a museum, to tell this story in a museum, because people weren't really telling the story of Civil War medicine. There are many Civil War museums or Civil War wings of a museum, but nothing just devoted to the story of Civil War medicine. We are the only museum solely dedicated to the story of the Civil War medicine. So still nationally, although Seminary Ridge Museum does tell the story well as too, and the story of that hospital there too. So. So they founded a museum at the beginning. It was a very small museum with the collections, and then in 2000 we are located in the building. It's the Carty building in Frederick. They renovated some of the building. They got some of the back of the building. So actually, I should say, 1996, we are celebrating 30 years this year.
Yeah.
So
Wonderful.
in 2000, they really renovated the building that we're in now to encompass what we are today, which is the museum itself is on 2 floors, and it tells the story of the origins of Civil War medicine, the precursor to it. What was the education system like for medicine before the Civil War? Sort of these antiquated ideas, and then really how the war itself sparks this innovation in medical, in medical treatment, healthcare, and where we've come to today from there. So that is what the museum's mission is to tell that history, but also to relate it to medical care today, healthcare today as well, and how we're still learning from some of what we learned back then. There are lots of pieces of it, including the Letterman system, that are still in play today. This idea of triage, getting a patient and deciding, should they go on to more healthcare, or can they just be bandaged up and put back into battle, or do they need to go for surgery? That's an idea that if you go to any emergency room, you're going to experience the triage, and that's got its roots in Civil War medicine.
Amazing. Now, many people are aware of the one in Frederick, but there were a couple other sister sites, such as the Clara Barton Missing Soldiers Office, which the Frederick office took over operations of it in DC. And then historically, you guys have also been on Antietam Battlefield at the Pry House Barn. And I'm a little biased. I'll admit to our viewers here, I have given several talks at the Medicine Museum in Frederick, and I do some writing for you guys, but I will say it is by far one of the best, most well-done exhibits I've seen. And the amount of public programs you guys put on that spans a whole array of topics, because some people may be asking, well, what is there left to talk about with Civil War medicine? Don't we know it all by now, or how else can we interpret it? But it honestly is still evolving, and there's been a great initiative on your guys' part to bring in the new perspectives, to bring in newly published authors, some new ideas, and some new discussions to the table, which is awesome. Now, a big part of what you guys are doing going forward is a huge redesign. And I want to give you time to tell us about what's changing, what we can expect.
Yeah, absolutely. And yes, thank you for pointing out the programming, because we have a great staff at the
Yeah.
museum, our education staff, our collection staff, our membership staff, everybody on staff is, and our interpretation, of course, and our executive director. Everybody is a really good team that works
Yeah.
super hard together to really push this mission forward. And we've really tried to increase the programming and outreach to bring that story to more people, and to really expand the story through many different programs, like our Meet the Author program, where we have authors that come on. We do Facebook Lives. And then also our speaker series, we have that. Our director of interpretation, Dana Schoaf, does administers most of the speaker series, and then our lead educator, Tracy McIntyre, she works on the Meet the Author series. And again, just different programming that we're really trying to increase telling the story and who we can tell it with. So yes, we do also have a upgrade coming. So we kind of say that this is maybe one of the most exciting times to be involved with the museum, because as I said, in 2000, we sort of opened the museum that year in a new way in the building that we're in right now, with the 2 floors, the galleries and exhibits. Many of them that we have today still have their roots or are the same ones that we opened with at that point. So some of them need some refreshing. And again, that was 26 years ago. So there have been new ways to interpret everything to do with the Civil War and interpret history. And we really want to incorporate some of the stories that have evolved, or our understanding of them have evolved. So we are really right now at the end of the concept and design phase of reinventing the galleries and the exhibits. Some of the stuff is going to stay the same. We have some murals on the wall that some of our members really like, so we're not changing all the murals. We have some dioramas that people are really enthusiastic about, and we are too. So many of those are going to remain the same. We're just going to upgrade them or improve upon them. We're going to introduce in some areas a little bit of new technology, better lighting, just to enhance some of what's already there. But we are going to put in new panels, we're going to exhibit some new artifacts that we haven't been able to exhibit before. And we're just going to change a couple, few of the galleries to include a little bit more of the social history as well. We do tell the story of nurses in the Civil War, but we really want to focus on this is a revolutionary change for women at this time. To be a nurse, to have employment, and that's something that will change the course of women's history, and also African American history. This is a change for them to be recognized. African American doctors, what was their struggle to be a doctor? What was a woman's struggle to be, included in the medical care? And so we're gonna tell those stories, but we're also going to introduce a little bit more of the Confederate medical history too. We have a little bit of that, but we have some new artifacts, some pretty exciting new artifacts that we're going to be unveiling that are, cover the Confederate medical history as well, and how they mirrored or also advanced their organization just as the Union side did. So we're really going to try to tell a little bit more of a complete story. As we do that, I should say, we really appreciate what's here, because we can see how hard it must have been to establish this museum and tell the story that is there. So it is, we're grateful for the museum as it exists today. We think it's just fantastic, and it must have been so difficult to pick what story to tell. And so we're having some of that struggle too, but we're excited about where it's going to go. So we're at the end of the concept and design phase, and really just actually yesterday had some people on site that fabricators who are looking to bid on what will become the fabrication of some of the designs that we've come up with, and to start the construction process, which we hope to be doing next year, and we hope to unveil the new museum next year as well.
So exciting!
Yeah,
so,
it's very exciting. It's been really fun, and it's a lot of work, but it's really fun to just get a chance to look at everything that we have and see how we can tell the stories in new ways, and then also appreciate what we already have too. And
yes. Now, if anyone watching is not currently following the National Museum of Civil War Medicine on social media, you must, because they frequently post artifact spotlights and story spotlights. And I want to actually talk about some of those artifacts, because I mean, there's a good handful of like some awesome ones and some honorable mentions. But you want to pick out just a handful of artifacts that are currently on display that you just really adore, and kind of like the importance about them, because I can think of like 5 right now that I love on site, but I want to hear from you.
We have some very cool ones, yes. So yeah, I would say one of my favorite artifacts that we have on display is the Lincoln arm, and it's a prosthetic arm, and really it tells several different stories, again, of innovation. Once there's all of these men that, of course, are coming home from the war, they've been, had amputations. The idea for prosthetics is very new. It's or antiquated, really. It's not necessarily new, but they're, very rudimentary designs.
Yeah, very touch and go.
Yeah, it really sort of sparks this innovation, this idea that, well, I want something better than this. So there are many people who will start to innovate new ideas for prosthetic arms, prosthetic legs. Again, the story of Hanger. James Hanger was one of the first, if not the first, amputee of the war, although we sort of contested that in our magazine, whether he was the first or not. But he comes home from the war, and the prosthetic that's available to him is not comfortable. It doesn't allow him to do what he wants to do. He's had his leg amputated, so he starts to innovate a new idea for a prosthetic, and it is he starts a company, and it is still the largest prosthetic company today. So the Lincoln arm is similar to that that we have on display. It has it's got several different pieces of the design to it that are innovative for it. It has a ventilation to it that would allow for air to move through. It's got a retractable thumb, so it's meant to help you hold things better. And it's just a really neat glimpse into, this idea of making something bigger, better, and more useful. What do these men need help with? The innovation matches what they're struggling with and where they need help. So
like troubleshooting.
Absolutely. So I think that's really needed. Also, the prosthetic industry at that point really starts to kind of tell the story of contracting too, government contracting, which is, Hanger gets a contract from the Confederate government to create more, and that's a new story as well. There are so many times where I'll be telling a story and I'm like, that started in the Civil War, and
right,
and it's like, it did. So awesome. That's one of my favorite artifacts that we have. Of course, one of my other favorites is the Clara Barton stove that we have in our collection. And right now it's not on display, but it will be in the new exhibits, which I'm very excited about. It tells the story from the missing soldiers office as well, which is the other site that we administer, the Clara Barton Missing Soldiers Office in Washington, D.C. And of course, that was up in the attic. The very, very short version of the story of that site is that she had lived there, worked there during the Civil War. She started an office there to help find missing soldiers, and she was able, through her work to find and locate 22,000 missing soldiers during between about 1865, 1866, and 1868. In 1868, she kind of closes up shop and leaves and goes overseas, finds out about the Red Cross. The rest of that is history.
Yeah.
And her co-tenant, whatever, the landlord, Edward Shaw, that lived there as well, took all her stuff and put it up in an attic. And you fast forward to 1996, that building is about to be torn down. After the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory, the third floor was a boarding house. The middle floor was office space, and the first floor were shops. After the fire codes change in the early 1900s, the landlord or the owner of that building just shut the third floor off. So in 1996, it's been closed for quite a while, and a inspector shows up there just to take one last look around, make sure there are no vagrants in the building. Goes to see something at the window because he thinks he heard a siren or there's a crash outside or something. He says he feels a tap on his shoulder, turns around, it's pitch black. He's got his flashlight and he looks up at the ceiling and sees an envelope hanging out from the attic, or a little attic crawl space. Takes it down. It says Edward Shaw on it, and he thinks, what else is up there? Goes up, looks around, and finds the sign for Clara Barton's missing soldiers office. And also, that's how he saves the space. He starts this sort of clandestine mission to save that building, because now he knows it's not just a building to be demolished. It's holding history. So he does save the space, and up in that attic space was also Clara Barton's camp stove, which is one of the items that we have in our collections that we are, again, we will be displaying it in our new exhibits. And it tells such a fascinating story of that, but also Clara Barton mentions it in letters. And it still has like soot on it.
It has a paper trail.
Clara Barton's soot, it's just, it's so neat. She talks about using it in her letters, and it's right there. So
all these mundane objects are sometimes the most fascinating, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Any other artifacts you want to mention tonight?
Yeah, I mean, we have a lot of new artifacts that are coming. I think we just actually finished an appeal for a hospital flag. Kind of a cool story, actually. We have a hospital flag in our collections that flew above City Point, and it hangs in our gallery on the first floor. And we talk about the history of the flag, the determination to have a flag. How do you designate that this building is a hospital? These are brand new ideas at this time, which we kind of take for granted, that that personnel were designated on the battlefield with different colored hats or some sort of a badge or band or something to differentiate them. That's commonplace today, but it was not then. It was not even, that's really the first time that is utilized. And the same for a hospital site. They wanted to be able to differentiate a hospital site from any other site. So they create this system of flags, and they created a yellow flag. The Union had a yellow flag with a green H on it, and they regulated different sizes for a general hospital, a field hospital, or an ambulance. And so the flag that we have in our collections is a flag that flew above City Point. So it's a general hospital, size. It's the size of the standard for that. And then we have just acquired, through our appeal process and very generous donations from some individuals and many of our members and donors as well, thank you, a hospital flag that was a field hospital size. And this one has brilliant yellow color and brilliant green color still, because it probably didn't actually fly above one of the buildings, but we do have provenance for where it was. The regiment, I think it was Massachusetts or Maine, regiment that had received the flag. So actually, a really cool story.
Yeah.
That one's brilliantly colored, and the one that we've had in our collections for a long time is very faded. It doesn't hold any of the yellow or green anymore. So when you actually see a picture of what the flag looked like, and then you look at the flag that we have that flew at City Point, it's like, oh my gosh, it's so faded. And we just recently, our director of interpretation, Dana, was reading some stuff on Facebook and saw a man who does a lot of material culture, works a lot in object stuff like that, especially fabrics, was posting about how he has a letter that came from the National Archives where somebody is writing a letter to Surgeon Barnes and complaining about the dye in the hospital flags and how easily it fades when it's flown. That as soon as you start flying it, it starts to fade, and then actually starts to pose a safety hazard because it looks like a Confederate surrender flag. So
that's so
it's
interesting.
like, oh wow, this flag just got a whole new story attached.
Yeah.
So, and we're able to tell that story now with both of those flags.
That's so cool.
Yeah, it's really neat.
One of I think a fan favorite artifact that has made a lot of news and publicity is the Antietam arm.
Oh yes.
Which, if you don't mind, as our last artifact, to tell a little bit about that artifact.
Yeah, the Antietam arm it's a mummified arm, so it's actual human remains. So actually, when we open we're going to redo some of that gallery, we're actually going to have some interpretation talking about the significance of human remains. A little bit more than we do now. Of course, we tell the story. It is found on the Antietam battlefield. They've done some work on, testing it and been able to find out, that it's been ripped off, and it is through the testing they've been able to identify that it was a young male, and the time period that it would be a soldier during that time period, and it was ripped off and then becomes mummified, and somebody eventually picks that up off the battlefield, and it's in our collections now. And we're going to really talk about how battlefields are hallowed ground with that artifact in our new interpretation of it, and try to tell the story of how these battlefields are still giving us stories. They're hallowed ground. There are men still buried on many of them. Again, like I mentioned, they just found a surgeon's pit at Manassas about 6 years ago. There are still stories coming from the battlefield, and that's one of the ways that we're going to talk about that story too. So that is
awesome.
Definitely an interesting artifact as well.
I know, right? So I'm gonna ask you one more thing before we move into our Q&A, and to remind our viewers, feel free to put any questions you have for Melissa about any of the topics tonight in the chat, and then we'll put them on our screen. Interpreting Civil War medicine, what is something you really enjoy about it? And what is something that's either rather difficult or maybe even unpleasant about it? Kind of like the good and bad of what you do.
Ooh, well, like I said, the good is what I really love about interpreting Civil War medicine, being able to talk about this story in the museum, is again just how many different pieces of the story it encompasses. There's so much social change that is part of the story of Civil War medicine. The innovation of it is fascinating. I mean, it's just incredible to see where you came from in 4.5 years. And again, in ways that are still impacting us today. It's a story that is still extremely relevant today. Dana always says of all the places in the Civil War, you can draw a direct line from the Civil War to today through Civil War medicine. And I think that's really neat. It's really powerful. And a lot of times when you talk about Civil War medicine, people think of a saw and sawing off his arm, but it's just so much more than that. So in terms of not liking, I mean, anybody who knows me knows I'm always running around going, I love my job, so I don't really find anything unpleasant about it. I would say probably the hardest part would be just, the mythology that has come up over the years and just trying to sort of debunk some of that. The myths that come that there was no anesthesia used, there was, probably 99% of amputations, they used anesthesia. So there's a lot of stuff that, because Civil War medicine really hasn't been talked about as much as other aspects of the Civil War, like the battle tactics or the personalities or the battles in general, there's still a lot of misunderstanding about it. So some of that can be maybe not frustrating, but a challenge to all of us at the museum to be able, but it also gives us such an opportunity. So
100%. See a challenge and it's just like challenge accepted. I'm happy to research into it. Excellent. Well, Daz, would you mind putting up the first question of the evening? And a reminder, anyone can put a question going forward. What are the top Civil War sites near Frederick? So the Frederick area, feel free to talk about that a little bit, because Frederick was a hospital network, a city of hospitals, right?
Yes.
So tell us about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Frederick itself is a Civil War site. So the area itself, we say, and our director of research, Terry Reamer, actually has written a book called One Vast Hospital, and we sell that. And she actually just updated it with some new hospital patient lists and some new introductions. So we have that book available, and she did exhaustive research for it to talk about how Frederick was one vast hospital, and many cities have this happen to them that are near battlefield sites or near, sites where battle action takes place, where any structure that can be is turned into a field hospital or a site to treat patients and treat the wounded. And Frederick was that. There's 27 churches and buildings in town that were turned into hospital sites. And so Frederick itself is full of Civil War history. Actually Civil War trails, has got a good amount of signage in the area. So you could do a walking tour, and we offer a walking tour of Frederick and Civil War hospital sites. Cool. So Frederick itself is, of course, Monocacy Battlefield is very nearby. And so that's a good site to go to. The Mount Olivet Cemetery in town as well. There's a Confederate section of the cemetery that we tell some of the stories of that too. And then we're very close to Antietam. It's not far away. So we do a lot of programming with and through Antietam Battlefield, and that's very nearby as well. So
awesome.
I would say those are top 3 sites if you're in the Frederick area to hit. So.
Absolutely. All right, next question, please. All right, my question concerns the possible links of international predecessors to American Civil War medicine and its subsequent lessons learned by other nations' militaries. Oh, so like an example would be like Florence Nightingale in the Crimean War.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is, and I'm glad you asked, because that is actually one of the stories that we are going to tell better and more of in the new. We actually have a whole little display about the Crimean War and the lessons that were learned there, particularly the Delafield Commission that goes over there to learn from the Crimean War and brings back some of these lessons. And McClellan is part of that commission, that brings back some of these lessons for Jonathan Letterman and, the Union Army, and then of course, again, the Confederate Army as well, for us to learn from. And when the Civil War breaks out, they do take some of those lessons. So we talk a lot about the Letterman system, but the Letterman system does have, and again, the Letterman system is named after Dr. Jonathan Letterman, who was the medical director of the Army of the Potomac. He does institute this system of, organized care, which very briefly is, the first site basically being a triage site, a field, aid site, and then whether you go back to battle or you go onto a second site, which would be a field hospital for treatment in surgery, and then go to a third site, which would be a general hospital for long-term care. That system and some of the roots of it they pick those pieces from what is learned by this Delafield Commission in international affairs. So yes, there are lots of pieces of that, and we expand a lot of that, and we are going to tell that story, and we have a whole panel devoted to Florence Nightingale too.
Oh, wonderful. Oh, that'll be great. I'm so excited for that. All right, next question, please. What would you say is the most important innovation in military medicine or medical theory in this period of the war or prior to the war?
Yeah, well, let's see, from the 1850s to 1860s. The most important innovation in military, I would say that it probably is this sense of organized care. And Letterman really, I would say that his ideas behind, organized care is the best way I can think to encompass what I'm trying to say. Yeah. But he really is the first person who sort of comes to it and says, hey, we have to be, more purposeful about this. We need to think about nutrition. We need to think about cleanliness. How far is the latrine from the camp? These are all things that really weren't being considered before that. And Letterman starts to organize that idea. When he starts to organize some of this, the new nutrition ideas, and then again, cleanliness, but they don't understand germ theory. So he's sort of improving germ theory or germ,
understanding
accidentally, but what he does is begin to sanitize some of the camps accidentally by, saying if once the latrine gets to a certain height, we need to cover it with dirt. And then once it gets to 2 feet, we need to move it. So he starts to improve the conditions of the camps, and that makes a dramatic effect. When he starts in 1862, I believe, he just comes in and institutes these changes, including nutrition, cleanliness, the little things like that. How many times the men wash themselves. Right. He lays this plan out. Within 1 month, they have 2/3 of disease is like wiped out. He has this improvement in the number of sick men immediately. It just is immediate. So I would say that is definitely the most important innovation of that time, at that time, for the war effort.
A lot of those organizational tactics are seen as, I guess, boring compared to other aspects of the war, but they do. Yeah. It's like a do or die situation, because in Alexandria, where I study a lot about the prisons, the superintendent had to really ask for like tomatoes and fresh water and heating, because he's like, I can't run this place. And it took a very long time for that to kind of work its way up the hierarchy to get permission. And that stuff may seem like boring letter writing and just commissary, but it's very critical. So good point.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what's interesting about it too is we talk about it in terms of Civil War medicine, but really why Letterman is doing this is to make a better army, to have a better army for them to win the battles. If you really want to go out and have, and win the war, you need strong men to be out there fighting the battles. So his base is to improve some of these conditions, but his larger goal is to have a stronger army.
Yes, 100%. Next question, please. How will Surgeon General William Hammond be represented in the upgrade, if he will be?
He will be represented quite a bit, actually. So we are We'll be introducing, oh, it's Dr. Hill. We'll be introducing Hammond right up front in the first gallery, really talking about how, he's the one who brings Letterman in, and this is how this organized effort starts to happen. So we will be telling his story actually throughout the entire museum. We have multiple panels, I'll say, that discuss the Letterman system and its organization. And so the first room, we're introducing Hammond, McClellan, and Letterman to tell that story. And then we carry it throughout the whole museum. We have, in the end, basically 5 different galleries. And we carry it through all of those galleries so that you can see, when you get to Camp Life, what does it mean to institute these ideas that Hammond is bringing Letterman in to start. Hammond is really the brainchild behind some of this. So we tell his story and start to tell that story there, and we carry it all the way through the end. The last gallery, right now, our last gallery is we call it sort of a hodgepodge room, because it has a lot of different stories, including the current medical story. But what we're really going to do with that last gallery is talk about the impacts of the war and where we go from there. The innovations that last, including the pension system and current medical treatment, triage, how we use that today. And so we're going to wrap up Hammond's story in that gallery as well.
Oh,
so
people awesome.
Have a huge role in the museum.
Good. Excellent. We have time for one more question for the evening. So let's put the last one on the board. All right. Would you say that there is any lingering Napoleonic influence in the way hospital trains and field hospitals operate in this period, or had the Crimean War rendered those earlier ideas moot? Hospital trains and field hospitals.
Yeah, well, hospital trains and field hospitals, I think when we talk about the Crimean War and sort of the transport of the wounded, we really start to, we actually are going to talk about hospital trains. We have a ramp that really talks about even innovation in that effort at that time, how they were trying to make it a more comfortable ride, how these men are very close together. So I don't really necessarily know how to answer about the Napoleonic influence there, but we definitely are going to tell the story about some of these transport systems. And again, even the ambulance story that really has its roots in the Crimean War. And that's one of the things that the Delafield Commission will see, just a very little glimpse of these the ideas of ambulances and the use of ambulances. They'll bring that back here. And when the war breaks out and there are men laying on the battlefield for a week, they think, we need a better ambulance. We need ambulances. And that entire system is an innovation that kind of comes out of the ambulance corps system, all of that through those efforts. And again, its roots are there in the Crimean War. And we're going to tell that story too. So
there's so many great things coming up. I'm so looking forward to any
It's a very exciting time for the museum. Yes.
Right. Excellent. All right. That wraps up our awesome conversation with Melissa Winn. Now, Melissa has recently joined Emerging Civil War as a full member, so be on the lookout for her upcoming articles. You can find the National Museum of Civil War Medicine on Facebook and Instagram. Visit their website at civilwarmed.org. I want to thank everybody for joining on Facebook and YouTube. And thank you, Melissa, for talking with us this evening.
Thank you very much for having me.